Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here today. I'm delighted to present Andy Rowe from an organisation called Critical Arc, who produce a wonderful free app called SafeZone, which we've just implemented. We've just introduced to students, which helps look after your safety, can give you emergency communications when necessary, and also has some wellbeing functionality. It's something we've been using for staff here at the university for 2 or 3 years now. I'm really excited to be able to give students that benefit too. So I'm going to introduce you to Andy, who knows a lot more about how it works than I do.
Fantastic. Hi everyone, thanks for having us. First question, how many of you are from UK universities? Come from UK universities? And how many of you have heard of SafeZone? Oh, we have got a couple of hands up. That's great. SafeZone is used in around 60% of the UK higher education market. So if you've been to a UK university, there's a fairly good chance that you've heard of SafeZone already. But we do have quite a few universities using SafeZone also in Australia. So do we have any Aussies here? Anyone who's been to us? Yes. Which university? Melbourne, yes. University of Melbourne is one of our customers in Australia. Anyone else? Anyone from the US? Yes, I'm not going to go around all of you and ask, but we've got quite a few customers in the US as well, so there is a chance that maybe your organisation used SafeZone. And we've been working with universities for about 10 years in the UK, and the reason why most organisations bring SafeZone into the organisation is they want to provide a quick and easy way for staff and students to be able to request emergency assistance. Because if you go up to your average student and ask them what's the number for the security team to get first aid help, most students won't be able to tell you. They might have it on the back of their student ID card, but they've probably forgotten that it's there. And in a panic situation, when you find somebody collapsed in a corridor, or you yourself are having a medical emergency, we had an incident at one university in Wales where a lecturer collapsed right in front of all of the students during a lecture. Fortunately, one of the students used SafeZone to raise an alert. That alert went through to the responders who have an app on their phone. They could see where the alert was raised and they were able to get a defibrillator to that academic within a few seconds. That could have saved that person's life. So one of the reasons we encourage people to download SafeZone isn't just because you might need it yourself. We always say it's for someone else potentially. Because you may find someone. Of course, you can always dial 999. No one's stopping you doing that. But really, in a lot of situations, those first responders that are first aid trained, that are on site, these professionals that you're very fortunate to have here at Senate House and across the University of London campus, or the buildings in this area, they are trained responders and able to support you. So I'll just very quickly explain what the different buttons do on the SafeZone app. Then I'll just quickly run through how to download it, how to register, and essentially what happens when you press one of the buttons. So the big red emergency button, that's if you require urgent emergency assistance. So you can press that button. It gives you a little bit of time to cancel the alerts. If you press the button by accident, don't worry, you can just press the button while the time is winding down. You've got a blue security button that just calls the number for the security team, and then you've got a green first aid button. That does exactly the same as the emergency button. It just lets the security team know that it's medical related. So if you've fallen down and hurt your knee and you need an ice pack, or you can't walk because you've sprained your ankle or something like that, it's all fine at the moment, but I'm sure in the winter months sometimes walking around you might hit some ice and end up. And I know it's normally your pride that's hurt more than anything else, but if you do get injured, obviously you can always use SafeZone and someone will come and provide that first aid assistance to you. You've got a wellbeing assistance button as well, and that's got specific configuration configured for SAS Institute students. So that's been configured so that when you press that, you'll be shown a list of options that are available to you. And they include external services as well as access to internal resources. You'll notice at the top there's also a check-in and a check-in timer button. So when you press the check-in button, that just shares your location with the security team. It doesn't generate any sort of alert or anything like that. And that's just useful if you just want the security team to know you're there. So if you're lone working, for example, or working out of hours, you just want the security team to know that you're in the building, you can choose to check in. You might be asked to check in if there's an emergency situation on campus. People that are using the SafeZone app might be asked to check in just to help coordinate the response. So you may get a request to check in. And the check-in timer is going to be more used for if you're doing lone working or you're in a high-risk environment. Perhaps you're working alone late at night in the library, and you might not necessarily feel particularly unsafe, but you might just like to use a timer. If you don't cancel or extend that timer before it winds to 0, it will automatically raise an alert on your behalf. And the benefit of that is you can also add a note, so you can actually specify your location. So when an alert is raised, it does share your location, but it'll only give your 2D location, so the location that comes off your phone as if you're using Google Maps. So you will obviously need to provide a precise location if you're worried about being incapacitated. There may be some of you that have disabilities. Some of you may have diabetes, some of you may have epilepsy, some of you may have other disabilities, you may feel more vulnerable. There is something called incapacity detection as well that can be toggled. So while incapacity detection is toggled while the timer is winding down, if you crash or fall while the timer's running, it will automatically raise an alert on your behalf. So if you've collapsed on the floor while the timer is running, the security team will be alerted automatically. So how to get safe and get started? Firstly, go to Google Play or Apple App Store and search for SafeZone. It's all lowercase attached. If you put safe space zone, there is this sort of zombie apocalypse game, which I'm sure is a little bit more exciting than our app, but it won't keep you safe. It doesn't take up too much memory on your phone. We have had complaints from some students a few years ago when we didn't have as much storage capacity on our phone, and I was a little bit harsh at some of these welcome events, because I had a student saying, I haven't got enough space on my phone, and I noticed there was the Love Island app. I said, well, that can come off, that's not going to keep you safe. And they nodded sheepishly and agreed to remove it so that they could put SafeZone. And I felt that was a very proud moment that I managed to get someone to put SafeZone on their phone instead of the Love Island app. Once you get to the registration page, you just need to enter your london.ac.uk email address. It'll then take you through the single sign-on process. I imagine you probably have some multi-factor authentication to do, as is the norm. I won't go through all that because I'm sure you'll be familiar with that. Well, you certainly will after a few weeks. I know it takes some time getting used to this kind of thing. You'll be asked to accept terms and conditions, and I'm sure you're going to read every word of the whole T's and C's. Well, I would expect you to.
They will.
You will. I'd expect you to. And then once that's happened, you'll be asked to accept certain permissions. So it's going to ask for access to things like location, Bluetooth, notifications, and all that kind of thing. Whenever it comes to location permissions, we understand that sometimes people feel nervous about allowing access to location for applications. So I just really wanted to draw attention to this and say, look, we understand why that is. Our company is absolutely obsessed about privacy. It's absolutely core to everything that we do, because our role is really to help keep people safe, and we don't want people's concerns over privacy to be a barrier to them having SafeZone on their phone. So even though you're asked for access to location at all times, and that's just so that when the app's swiped to the background when you're checked in, it doesn't cancel your check-in essentially. And it also means that when you go to raise an alert, it's not trying to locate your GPS location, because that could slow down the response, okay? Your location only leaves your device if you check in or raise an alert. At any other time, it's completely stays on your device essentially. I've actually got SafeZone running at the back of the room, so if any of you got any questions later on and you want to pop in and have a little look and see how it works, I can actually show you live. So if you're not convinced by that, I can prove it, so I can show you what it looks like in a live situation. So there is a link to our privacy policy there, so I don't know how this presentation will be shared, but I'll talk to Steve about how we can make sure you can access that. But if you search SafeZone app privacy, you'll find that if you just Google it. We do have the ability to send out SMS notifications as well through the app for people to make sure that, in the event of a serious incident, we can lock down buildings or keep people away. Obviously, if there was a serious incident in this part of London, we wouldn't want you, I know a lot of you are working remotely and only coming onto campus on certain days, we wouldn't want you to come into a dangerous situation. So even if you don't have SafeZone, there is a chance you might receive an SMS message. If you do not wish to receive any SMS messages, which will only be used for life safety incidents, there are some instructions on there for going into SITs to A, make sure your mobile number is correct, but B, you have the option to opt out should you wish. I can't imagine why anyone would want to do that because, as I say, this is only to be used in a life safety incident to essentially keep you safe. So where does SafeZone cover? So if you tap the map button at the top right hand side of the app, it'll show you a map. In blue areas are the areas where SafeZone operates. You can see that the Senate House, Stewart House, the SAS Institute buildings, and various others are covered. If you want to go through that in more detail, obviously just download the app and look at the map section, or if not, come and see me at the back and I can just show you the map on the live screen if you want just to see what that looks like. Outside of those areas, you'll just be prompted to call emergency services should you try to raise an alert in the app. So if you raise an emergency alert, the timer will wind down, as I mentioned earlier. Your location and information will be shared with the security team, and the phone will automatically prompt you to call the security number. If you're unable to speak and you don't want to speak, because maybe you think someone's following you, perhaps you're not confident speaking on the phone, perhaps there could be a whole variety of reasons why you might not want to speak out aloud. You've got the option of using that blue button there that's just marked in yellow. That will allow you to have a two-way text-based chat with the security team. We've got quite a lot of examples that we can give you of where that's been used by students that have been in situations where they haven't been able to feel comfortable having a phone call with security to say, I need help, but they have wanted to still have that two-way communication with the security team for reassurance. The only thing I would say is please don't ignore the calls. Security don't mind false alarms. They happen. People raise alerts by accident. It's perfectly normal. What they struggle with is when people raise alerts and then switch their phone off and hope the problem will go away, because they will come looking for you because they'll think that something's really wrong, which is obviously nice to know because you know that they're going to come looking for you, but it's really helpful to pick up that call and just to say, I'm really sorry, it was a false alarm, and they'll be absolutely fine with that, but that's just something that's worth mentioning. And when you sign up for the app, obviously please just make sure your mobile number's correct, because otherwise there is a possibility that if you've got one digit wrong, the security team are going to be calling a poor unwitting Mrs. Miggins up in Scotland, who's some granny who's has no idea what SafeZone is. I'm not going to try and do a Scottish accent, but needless to say, she's going to be very confused, the security team are going to be very confused, and you're potentially going to be in a serious situation and they're not going to be able to get hold of you very easily. So the blue button is very similar. That'll just dial the number for the security team, so I don't need to necessarily explain that. The first aid button does the same as the emergency button, so I'm not going to go through that. Very quickly, just the check-in time, I pretty much already covered this, but you can set the timer for up to 12 hours, and as I mentioned earlier, you've got that option of activating the incapacity detection. That only works while the timer is winding down. The reason why we restrict that only to it being linked to the timer is because if we were to enable that at all times, it would really drain your battery. One of the other permissions that we ask when you go through permissions is access to motion and fitness permissions. And you might be thinking, why on earth does SafeZone need access to motion and fitness? It isn't because we're interested in how many steps you're doing. It's purely to make sure that if your phone isn't moving and you're checked in, we're not going to be polling your location. And that obviously saves battery life. Because the big thing that drains battery, and I'm sure you've realised if you walk around London with your phone navigating, it really drains your battery because it's using your phone as a sat-nav, which is fine when you're in the car because you can plug it in. When you haven't got a power bank and you're just walking around London for an hour trying to navigate your way around, it does really drain the battery. So that's why motion and fitness permissions are asked for, so that if you're just sat down in a room, it's not going to be using up any battery drain on that. Once you set the timer, obviously that's going to wind down. You can extend it by tapping the button again, and you can just extend the timer. It's fairly self-explanatory. There is a video that we produced, by the way, that covers all of these things, which will be made available to you. So if there's anything here that you're not sure about, you can just rewatch the video. It goes through all of this in quite a bit of detail. And finally, we've got, as I say, the Wellbeing Assistance button, and that will provide you with options that have been specifically tailored to SAS Institute students. So thank you ever so much for your time. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
When you put that timer on and the timer gets close to running out, does it give you a reminder so that you can turn it off?
It does. Great question. It gives you 2 reminders. I can't remember what at London. I should check this first. I can't remember at University of London what timings they're at. They're normally 5 minutes and 2 minutes or something like that. But yeah, you'll get a couple of reminder notifications. Does anyone else have any questions? Great. Well, thank you ever so much for your time. If any of you have got any questions and you're too shy to ask them in front of everyone, and I completely understand that, we'll be just stood at the back at the end. So before you go off and do your lovely social things, do feel free to come and talk to us if you've got any questions. Thank you very much.